Boot leather. Seeing as I have wanted another pair of boots, I think it's time to record another episode. Now, I did promise a crazy story about a drill sergeant and a Russian, but or either that or the crazy Egyptian. But I figured I'd do a special, cover all of my journeys in one hit. So, in 2017 was when I went on my trip to Broome from Perth. And I set out on foot. Did I accept hitchhiking rides along the way? Of course I did. I'm a hitchhiker. I'm a gypsy. But more than this, being a male, you are less likely to be picked up on the side of the road. And there are certain parts of Australia where no one's going to pick you up. And truckers, by regulation, can't pick you up due to insurance purposes. Now, is there exceptions to the rule? Of course there is, but for the most times out of 10, a trucker's going to pass you up, and out of maybe 100 cars that go past, one of them might stop and give you some water, and maybe one of them will actually give you a ride. So I did a lot of walking. In my journey from Perth to Broome, first in Perth, come across what you could call a honey trap. I was going to Northbridge, and anyone who's from Western Australia knows that Northbridge is where you go when you want to get laid. On my way to the pubs, saw this girl leaving Northbridge. She was done for the night. Said hello to her, she ignored me, I kept walking. Went to the pubs, I could see why. She was done with Northbridge for the night. The ratio was just fucked. There was maybe 5 guys to each girl. Unless you're an incredible PUA, you're not playing those numbers. So I turned around, went back the way I came, and I was waiting for the first train, heading north, which at the time went as far as Butler. Came across the same girl sitting out front of a comic book store, White Dwarf Books. And I said to her, "This ain't a bad place during the day. I frequent here myself, but it's a dangerous place for a pretty girl to be sitting here by herself." And she said, "What was that?" And I said, "It's a dangerous place." And she says, "No, that part about me being pretty." And that's where it started. So I'm talking to her, she's talking to me. She lets slip that she smokes and that she's hungry. It was my payday. I was flush with cash. So I took her to a 7-Eleven, bought her a pack of 25s. And I took her to McDonald's, gave her some food, and we went back to the comic book store. I had my first cigarette with that girl. Now, keep in mind, at this stage of my life, I'm about 19, 20, 21. It's been half a decade since this journey started. I can't give you an exact age. I'm flirting with her, she's flirting with me, and then I place my hand on her knee. She blushes and then turns around and says, "Before we go any further, I'm not going to say no because you're quite cute, but how old are you?" I say my age. She says, "Guess how old I am?" I say, "You look about 20, 25. And she says, "Younger than that." I said, 19. She says, "Younger than that." I said, "Are you at least 18? And she said, "I will be in 7 months." Now, the thing about Australia is, and sorry for that, pass on gas. The thing about Australia is our age of consent is 16 if you are under the age of 19. Immediately, alarm bells are going off in my head. This is a fuck situation. The best thing I can do is be a gentleman and get this girl back home. So I'm like, "Where the fuck do you live, girl?" She tells me she lives in Butler. So I keep her company for the night, get her on the first train to Butler because I was headed that way anyway. I crash in a piece of bushland, and the next day I head north. Maybe 4 or 5 towns outside of Perth headed north. I found this little road that went to another town, veering off the main highway, and I followed that all the way there. and it was just this eerie feeling in the middle of the bush. Like, you're not supposed to be here. Something bad happened, you know. And I get to the town, and they explain to me that it's pretty quiet. It used to be a mining town, and there's talk about reopening the mines and whatnot, and hopefully there might be a boom in the future. I intend to walk back to the highway, end up walking in a big circle, and end up back in the town, and then someone gave me a lift back to the highway, and I went on my merry way. Kept walking. Eventually I made it to Monkey Mire. Monkey Mire is also known as Shark Bay. Went to the beach, went swimming, and the lifeguard said over the PA, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've got a special occasion here today because it looks like we got a pod of dolphins coming into the water." I got to swim with dolphins, and that was amazing. Sadly, back there during the COVID times, the dolphins actually missed the tourists, and they've been putting coral on the beach to try and entice tourists to come back. It's quite sad. They're attached to us as much as we admire them as beautiful, intelligent creatures. Continued going north, ended up in the middle of absolute whoop nowhere. This guy gave me a lift to a servo and then turned around and started heading back towards Perth. Now, I walk up to the lady at the servo and say, "Is it alright if I pitch my tent near your servo? I'm running out of daylight, I'm not going to get much further today." And she says, "Yeah, hon, pull your truck up anywhere." I was barely into my 20s and she thought I was driving a truck, but hey, okay. I mean, I guess technically you can get your Ps at 17 and then you would be on your full license by the time you're 19 and you could, in theory, go for your HR. But, yeah. I don't know. And I said, "I'm not driving a truck, though." And she says, "Pull your car or motorcycle up anywhere." I'm like, "You don't understand, I'm on foot." And she goes, with this expression of half horror, half intrigue, "How the hell did you get out here?" And I said, "Oh, old mate gave me a lift, but he turned around and headed back to Perth. I'm headed north for now, no set destination, but at least for now I'm trying to get to Broome." And she says to me, "Darling, you're 250 miles. That's miles, not kilometres, away from the nearest piece of civilization. And it's back the way you came." So that's alright. At this stage, it'd been a week on the road. I'd been lazy. I'd been sleeping a lot on the side of the road in farmers' paddocks and shit like that. And I said, "My money comes in. I'll buy as much water as I can carry, and I'll be on my way in the morning." She says, "Look, hon, you can have as much water as you can carry. I suggest you buy a two-way radio." So that's what I did. For 3 days and 3 nights straight, I kept walking because at this stage I was in deep desert. If I had stopped moving during the day, I would have died of dehydration and heat stroke, even if I rationed my water, and if I had stopped moving during the night, it would have been hypothermia. That's just the nature of the desert. So I'm going on a pure endurance marathon here. I think I covered maybe 250 miles on foot with maybe 45-minute naps each day. I'd sleep if I could find shade just outside of the sun during the peak of the day, and I'd wake up once I was thirsty. There was one occasion where I went into a farmer's paddock that was dried out as fuck, and a wild dog actually slept next to me. Pulled open my bag, gave it a bit of my rations, and yeah. On the third night, I hear a truck coming, and during this journey, every time I heard a truck coming over the horizon, I knew they were about 20 k's out, which was the maximum range of my walkie-talkie. Yeah, this is a crazy hitchhiker on the side of the road. You're about maybe 20 clicks out, based on my calculations. I'll be well out of your way by the time you get there. I know you can't pick me up, but let people know on the CB radio that there's some crazy motherfucker headed north. Thanks. By the third night, when I put out the standard message, as soon as I let go of the button to talk, I received a reply. "I know exactly who you are. Where the fuck are you?" I can't remember the exact location I was in, but I remember passing a road sign maybe about 5-10 minutes before, and it said some random town, 250 k's. So I relayed the information. He says, "I know exactly where you are, stop moving." So I stopped moving, and 20 minutes go by, and here comes this truck flying down the road, going down the gears, and the sheer wind force of this truck coming off the road knocks me off my feet. This big hulking tower of a man, and this is hilarious. He dumps an entire bottle of water on my head, picks me up like his missus on his honeymoon, puts me in the fucking caddy of his truck, and throws another water bottle and a pie in my lap and says, "You crazy motherfucker, I've been hearing about you since I left Perth. Where the hell are you going?" I said, "No set destination, but the target for now is Broome." He said, "I tell you what, I'll take you 3 towns north, put you up for the night. The motel already knows I'm coming." So I get to this motel, eat the pie, stop through Macca's on the way there, and the lady at the motel's real nice, wants to hear the whole story, wants to know why this crazy motherfucker's walking through the desert. And they give me a free breakfast on the way out the door. And I get maybe 4 or 5 Ks outside of that town. And I get to this servo. I spent 2 days at that servo because it was 24 hours. And this guy who worked there, Stoner Man, he gave me free feed, free coffee. And if I ever go back to that place and he's still working there, if and when I make it big, I am fucking paying that guy back dividends. But I ended up leaving that town once I got my bearings and figured out which way was north and what highway to take. And I got maybe another 10, 20 Ks outside of the city limits, and I get picked up by the crazy Israeli. She's got a dual cab ute flying down the street, pulls her handbrake, screams out the window, "Hopping soldier." I was wearing, some kind of pants. I can't remember exactly what. They might have been cargo pants. A red shirt, and I had my backpack, duffel bag on top of the backpack, and a sleeping bag tied to the bottom of the sleeping bag. From behind, it could look like a soldier on a ruck march, so I can understand why she said that. I am not a soldier, not yet. It's my life aspiration. But at that time, I wasn't, and I was nowhere near close. Even now, I'm nowhere near close. So I get into a car, dual cab ute, and I say to her, "By the way, I'm not in the ADF, I'm just some crazy hitchhiker walking north, but yeah." And she says, "Mate, you're doing a ruck march in the middle of the desert. I'm from Israel. That's a fucking soldier to me." We talk about some random shit as we're traveling through the desert, and she says, "Do you smoke?" Now, besides that one cigarette I had with the honey pot, no, I did not smoke. And I said, "No, I don't smoke." And she says, "I don't mean cigarettes, dumbass, I meant weed." Now this, and I'm incriminating myself here, but yes, on occasion I do smoke weed. And she said, "Well, help yourself. I've got a couple joints rolled up, pass me one." So she gets me stoned, and I'm talking like big fucking joints, like old school hippie 60s style joints. This has been it was a fucking weed cigar. She got me stoned out of my mind on one joint. And she goes, "Do you drink?" And I said, "Oh, I'm a bit of a Scotchman myself." And she goes, "Well, aren't you lucky? I got some Johnny Walker in the fucking back seat." So she gets me drunk, and she turns around and says, "Well, are you ready?" I'm like, "Ready for what?" And she goes, "Do I really need to explain it to you? I picked you up on the side of the road. I'm a guy, you're a girl." I'm like, "Oh, fuck yeah." So she had her way with me on the back seat of her fucking dual cab ute. Woke up the next morning and she says, "You're finally awake," tracing the muscles that I was developing in my chest. And she says, "I went you when you sleep and you didn't even wake up. I guess you fucking needed some rest. You want to go again?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah. I'm a young fucking dick-thinking male. Of course I ain't going to pass up some poontang." So she has her way with me again and we keep driving. And, maybe 2-3 hours later, I'm like, "Hey, look, it's been incredibly fun. But you're starting to veer off inland towards Darwin, and I want to at least check out Broome before I go to Darwin. I'd love to catch up with you in Darwin. This has been incredibly fun, but you might have to call it here." This is a flashbulb memory because I'm never going to forget this shit. She pulled a knife on me that was made of polymer called a Zettel. Look it up. It's designed for covert ops and whatnot to get through metal detectors, and I remember the fucking look of this thing because motherfucker, she tried to stab me. I block her, just barely, rip it out of her hand and stab it into the center of the seat, brief the handbrake, my bags go flying off the fucking back of the tray. I bail out of the car, still moving, get grazed as shit. And this other trucker pulls up, comes out with a baseball bat and goes, "What the fuck is going on? What's going on for my bags?" And I said, "I'm crazy hitchhiker and that bitch just tried to stab me." And he's like, "Get in the fucking truck." It's like... And circling back to the previous trucker, this guy's name was the first trucker's name was literally Mick, and I was in Wolf Creek at the time. So anyway, fast forward back to where we were. The second trucker, he goes, "Mick just fucking dropped you off fucking 2 days ago, cunt. You get stabbed by the first car that picks you up, you can't. Clean yourself up. And that's when I realised she nicked me. She got maybe, I don't know, 3 or 4 million. Just enough to fucking make it bleed. And he's like, I wouldn't even bother reporting this to police. She's long gone. And it was maybe 2-3 days later I made it to Broome. So, if you've seen my first major red pill video, you know what happened in Broome. And that's when I decided to go down to Albany. Went down to Albany on foot, maybe got 3 or 4 cars along the way. And I ended up camping out between Albany and Esperance in the hills. And, long story short, I ran the fuck out of my camp because there was a whole bunch of gunfire in the forest that I never quite figured out what was going on there. Snuck back the next day, packed up my camp, went back to Perth, and then I decided to do my homecoming march. I went all the way back into the wheat belt, visited Kalgoorlie along the way, and then I went to Bruce Rock, the town I was born. I got drunk, ended up crashing at some chick's house, and she was severely disappointed because I didn't do anything with her, but hey, I had a bed for the night. Well, a couch anyway. After that, I decided to make my eastward march, went all the way to Tasmania, but along the way, halfway through the Nullarbor, actually no, even before then, I made it to this border town. I'm pretty sure it actually was called Border Town too. It was right on the border of South Australia and Western Australia. I was stayed there overnight, got a feed, and then started trying to hitchhike, and I couldn't catch a ride until fucking 3 days in. 3 days in, I couldn't catch a ride. And then I got picked up by this Egyptian fella who took me more or less the rest of the way to Adelaide, and the motherfucker smuggled fruit across the border, the cunt. And then basically I went through Adelaide. I really want to go back to Adelaide because that entire city's a grid. Like New York City, it is a grid. You can navigate easily through Adelaide because it's a grid. And I want to go back and explore that place, man. That's one of my hobbies, urban exploration, and I didn't give South Australia enough time. I shot straight through. Well, I caught this Yugoslavian trucker just on the outskirts of Adelaide, and he said, I can take you all the way to Melbourne or Sydney even, and whatnot, and I flipped a coin in my head, and I cursed that coin. It should have come up Sydney. I would be a year ahead of schedule if it was fucking Sydney. But no, it came up fucking tails, and I was going to Tassie. So I said, drop me off at Melbourne, I'll find my way. And I had been to Melbourne once before, ex-girlfriend, long story. And then I caught the first ferry I could, went to Tasmania, chip on my shoulder. I just walked across 2 fucking deserts. I was fit as fuck. And I got laid by some random girl in a motel, and I walked straight up to the city centre. I'm like, where the fuck is the work in this island, man? And they said, go to Burnie. So I went all the way back to the north, went to Burnie. I said, where the fuck is the work around here? And they said, oh, go to the west coast. They're going to open up the mines. And I fucking walked all the way there. Ended up in some shit old town called Queenstown. Everyone there was a fucking junkie or a stoner, and the stoners were also junkies, man. And fucking... long story short, I got nabbed. I talked to a fucking conspiracy theorist, and he told me his ideas about Port Arthur and the town played Chinese whispers, and apparently I was a threat to their precious little community, so I got locked up for 6 months. Wouldn't give him a confession because there was nothing to confess to. And then I was on fucking watch for fucking 6 months until I found out the shit they were doing to me, they couldn't do across state borders because I hadn't committed a crime. So I hightailed it back to fucking Melbourne, and then I hightailed it all the way to Sydney. That was a year wasted. In Sydney, I spent maybe a year there, stoned out of my mind in the Blue Mountains. I don't know how much I smoked, but I smoked way too much, and it was not healthy. I lost 6 months of memory there, man. And then a couple that I met in Tasmania looked me up on Facebook and said, hey, we're going to Queensland, you want to go? And I'm like, well, I'm a fucking gypsy, so I fucking fell for it. Ended up fucking stranded where I am now, on the outskirts at least, for about 6 months, and I moved into a shithole called Sturt Lodge. Fast forward a year, I got fucking nabbed again for fucking being homeless and fucking screaming at the sky, and you're all caught up to now. So hopefully my next bootlegger story And there will be more. There will be details that I remember that I'll fill in the blanks. But hopefully my next major bootlegger story is a positive one. I like to think there's some good, some bad, and some scary good. Being stabbed after a one-night stand, for example. But yeah, there you go. There is my last 5 years in a fucking nutshell. I walked, hitched, and fucking travelled 75% of Australia's coastline. So, if an army recruiter is listening back on this fucking video, there's my pitch. I've slept in the bush, I've lived off the land, I've climbed mountains, I've walked across deserts. I get my sea legs pretty good because I've been across the Bass Strait twice. And, yeah. I love this country because I've seen so much of it. I may hate the society we have, but I want to defend my country because I love the beauty of this country. I love the culture we have. I am a patriot of the West. And that has more than one meaning. Odin bless you. Hit that subscribe button. Become one of Odin's ravens today. Like and share, comment. Help me in the algorithm. Odin bless.